Hi, I am Rachel from 7 and All, and in this video I'm going to give you 5 tips about planning for the next homeschool year. Planning for next year, isn't that something that many of us kind of like to do as you start getting closer to the end of this homeschool year? Raise your hand if you're guilty of it. I know I definitely am. Here I want to give you 5 tips to help you say no to overwhelm during the planning process, because it can be a little intimidating attempting to look at the whole next year of homeschool at the same time. Now, number 1 suggestion is just begin by creating a simple outline. And many people are going to do this on the computer in an Excel sheet or in some kind of printable or form that has been created. All of you who live comfortably in the 21st century will do that. I will admit that I will probably just do it on a piece of notebook paper. That's just me. We all have our weaknesses. But for an outline, you really just need your kid's name and then a list of subjects and their grade level. Now, in planning ahead for the next year, I plan out the core things that we will be doing all year long, but I really just leave open anything that's going to be rotated in, kind of the morning basket or the fun extras, because, you might hear of something new throughout the year. You might just try something kind of interest-based. The extras, you don't need to plan out for the whole year. And once you have, just a little outline, I would go ahead and fill in any known quantities. Anything that you're continuing, anything that's just an easy answer for you. So go ahead and fill out any of those. And once you are done filling out what you know, you'll be able to more easily see the gaps that you have, and you won't be so overwhelmed because you're like, oh, look, I don't have to plan something new for everything. I just have to fill in these specific gaps. If you know you have some options in mind, you could go ahead and just write down your options and leave a question mark, but at least you have a couple things in mind maybe there. You're not sure what it will be just yet. And then when at least you kind of have semi-filled in the blank, and you can research your options or talk to your child a little further to determine what the final answer will be when you're filling in those blanks. So, see, it does not look so scary when you're just looking at a little chart, with a couple names or more names if you have more kids, a couple grades, and then what you are doing, the different subjects you have to meet. Number 2 tip for successful homeschool planning: avoid the temptation to totally switch up and change every curriculum that you're using right now. Know that the temptation to do so is very common, and it is a side effect of the winter/spring doldrums of homeschool. But their change can be a very, very good thing when it's targeted and very purposeful change. But change just because I'm so bored and I can't look at this curriculum anymore. It could just be the time of year. You just might be getting a little bit of that senioritis effect. So be aware that total changes for all your kids, for all your curriculum, can be very costly, both in money, if you're not able to reuse things from one kid to another. It can also be very costly in time, because learning how to use a new curriculum and really getting into your flow with a new curriculum will take extra time when you're starting up your next year. And there's kind of always that bit of wasted space, wasted time when you're just trying to get to learn how to use this, and your kids are trying to get the hang of it, and no one's really learning anything. So when you make changes, just think carefully about the changes that you make, rather than just changing everything just because you want to see new things. Number 3 tip: keep in mind that you are not planning for a hypothetical 3rd grader or a 6th grader, but for your actual child in whatever grade level they are. Because that seems really obvious, but it is something we can get kind of lost in, because we see this curriculum and it's leveled for 3rd grade, and we just kind of fall in love with it. And we forget about the fact that we are homeschooling a real human with their own quirks, with their own abilities, which might be higher in a certain subject area and lower in another subject area. So keep in mind you are choosing curriculum, you are doing planning for an actual child and for actual children. So how is this going to affect your planning? One, you're going to be careful to choose levels that fit. For example, if you're doing sunlight always has a little recommended age range for their different HBL cores that you could use. So you might be looking at a core that says for ages 10 to 13 and you have a 10-year-old and you're like, this is perfect. But maybe your 10-year-old is actually a more reluctant reader and doesn't have the strongest reading comprehension. In that case, I can pretty much guarantee you that trying to do a sunlight level labeled for 10 to 13 with a 10-year-old who isn't really thriving and an advanced reader is going to be very difficult. So don't be scared to pick a lower level, maybe a slightly lower level than recommended, because it's what's going to fit your child the best, or to pick a higher level than what's recommended for their age if you know that that is what is going to fit your child the best. Another way that you can let this affect your homeschool planning is to keep your child's interests and passions in mind as you plan. Now, this doesn't mean that you are going to let your child's interests dictate everything that they learn and everything that you plan, and your whole entire school year is going to be monster truck themed. That's not what it means. I'm not fully on board with child-led learning. I could do a video on that sometime if you'd like, but I think there always has to be some element of parent-led learning. There always has to be some element of actually meeting state requirements for homeschool. But you can, don't underestimate how motivating, encouraging, and inspiring it can be for when you realize, oh, your kid really loves to do mazes, or your kid really loves dot to dots. Now this is an example for younger kids or for older kids. They're really curious and passionate about sewing or doing watercolor art or just some little thing like that. It can be so fun for a kid to just simply include something that they genuinely just love and love to do for fun in their school stack, because then it almost feels like cheating, like they're getting to do something super fun for them during school time, and they know that book is coming up sometime during their little school routine, and it just gives them an extra little bonus. If you have kids that love sticker books and just go crazy for sticker books, and you're studying the medieval time period, buy some medieval history sticker books for your kids. Is it necessary? No. But don't underestimate the value of keeping in mind what they genuinely like to do, what they just have a natural interest in, and including some of that in your homeschool. One of my sisters was interested for several years as a very young child. Egyptian history just really fascinated her. And so we would throw in extra Egypt projects for no reason. We might be studying a totally different time period in history, but she could still do an Egyptian history sticker book or whatever. You can still have just things that are just fun, even when they don't tie in necessarily to the bigger subject that you're talking about. Number 4, when you are planning, remember the time-space continuum. Homeschool time does not actually exist in some kind of infinite time loop where we can genuinely do all the geography, cool projects and unit studies and artist studies, and we can learn some instruments, some foreign language on the side, have poetry tea parties, while also being very successful at teaching our children their math and how to write and all that stuff. We can go a little overboard in what we think we can do in a year. So while planning your year, remember the realistic time constraints of your year and prioritize what you are going to do accordingly. You probably can't do everything every year. And guess what? You don't have to. Especially when you're starting homeschool from a young age, you have many years ahead of you. You can even choose, hey, this year we're going to do a lot of all that fun geography stuff. This is a great year. We're going to kind of go a little overboard on the geography, but that we're probably not going to be able to do everything. So maybe we're not going to do so much on poetry this year. Maybe we're not going to do so much on some other kind of more side topic that enriches your life, but it's not something you have to be doing every day all the time. Some years have a special time constraints. Years that, for example, you have a baby. That's going to be an extra special time constraint. So if you think that you'll have a baby this school year, keep that in mind. If you have other special time constraints that are applying to this year, keep that in mind in your planning. But don't think that every year is going to be just as time limited as this one when you have this kind of extra special life-changing event happening. Not all years are like that, so some years are going to be a little bit more stripped down to the basics, open and go, while other years and other seasons you might be able to be that extra homeschool mom that we sometimes think we are when we're doing our planning. And number 5, my last tip for you is to, as you plan, remember that you have an awesome planning resource at your disposal, and that is the YouTube homeschool community or the online homeschool community at large. There are so many of us that are so willing to answer your questions, to give you a lot of information. If you're trying to decide between 2 curriculums, just type them into YouTube and look up some side-by-side comparison videos or some curriculum review videos from people who have actually used it. And you can get a lot of information very easily in this modern homeschool internet age. And if you have a question, just ask. You can ask me, you can ask many, the homeschool YouTubers are so nice, guys. Just ask them, and if they don't know, if I don't know, we likely have a friend who does know something about a certain curriculum, and we can say, hey, hop over to this person's channel. If not on YouTube, you can do this in Facebook homeschool groups as well, but use your online resources. We're here to help. That's why we have these channels. We're not just trying to make videos to sit here talking to nobody. And after all of this, know and keep in mind that your next year is not going to go exactly like you planned it. It's not. And that's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean you shouldn't plan. Having a plan is helpful. It even helps you to, I think, sometimes understand better why you need to change that plan because something has changed. I fully recommend having a plan, but also being willing to say, you know, I need to make some serious readjustments to my plan based on new information I have gathered. So those are my tips for you here today. I hope that they're helpful as you embark on the adventure of planning for the next homeschool year. Bye.